Okay, so hello and welcome to this next interview in our series 10 Minutes with a member of the Association for the Study of Scottish Literature. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. William Malcolm, one of the greatest specialists of Lewis Grassic Gibbon. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you, Bill, for this interview. Just a few words to introduce Bill before I start asking questions. So Bill Malcolm is joint administration of the Mitchell Literary Estate. He's been working in this capacity since 2018. He's also literary advisor for the Grassic Gibbon Centre at Arbuthnot, member of the Scottish Book Trust Live Literature Scheme. Bill is also honorary fellow of the Association of the Scottish Literary Scottish Literary Studies. He was made honorary fellow in 2017, and he speaks of himself as a doomed obsessive about Lewis Grassic Gibbon because he's been working on this writer for more than 40 years. After a PhD on this author in 1984, he published a large number of books on him. He edited just a few landmarks. He edited Sunset Song in 2007 for Penguin Classics. There was also Lewis Grassic Gibbon, The Reader, in 2016, and Bill produced two monographs on Lewis Grassic Gibbon. Lewis Grassic Gibbon, a revolutionary writer, also in 2016, and then Lewis Grassic Gibbon in the Northcote House British Council series, Writers and Their Work, in 2020, and most recently this biography entitled History of a Revoluter, published by Jetstone Books, which has just come out and which has been shortlisted for the Saltire Research Book of the Year. So, Bill, welcome to this interview.
Thank you very much, Mary.
And my first question to you, can you tell us a little more about how your interest in Lewis Grassic Gibbon started? What led you to write this PhD? Where did you write it in? What was the context of Gibbon studies when you started?
Right. It's been a lifelong passion, as you said. I've worked for more than half a century, actually, on Grassic Gibbon, and it's just been a constant in my life, in my academic life. I first encountered Sunset Song, as many people did, as a teenager at school. It absolutely blew me away. I've never read a book that has spoken so directly to me. A lot of the themes are universal themes, and anyone can relate to them. It's a very important book in terms of allowing you to understand yourself as an adolescent, about all the pains and pleasures at that time of life. It allows you to understand relations with your peers, relations with romantic relations with your family, relations with your community, and so on. There were also big themes. The theme about bonding with nature, which is a very topical one nowadays. And I always loved, we live in a beautiful part of the world, and I always loved escaping to the hills like Chris Guthrie and being on my own. And I suppose the kind of adult one was very much the political one, because the area I grew up in, up here in the north of Scotland, is not unlike the area that the book was written about down in the Mearns. And it's dealing with the political repression of the local smallholders by a feudal landowning system, where the laird has complete power. And I didn't really understand that when I was growing up, and to read the book, and that really made sense to me. So after that, I went to Aberdeen University, my local university, did my honours English degree. And then final senior honours, I did a modern Scottish literature module, and a Scots Quaere was, of course, was there. And it just blew me away again, absolutely. And I was very lucky at that time. There was state-funded further education, so I managed to get studentship to do a PhD, obviously on Leslie Mitchell, Lewis Grassic Gibbon. At that time, there was very little really done on him. Even in fact, to get a hold of the books, he published 17 books, and only 5 of them were in print. So I had to go down to the National Library of Scotland
Wow.
frequently, basically just to read the books. That has changed nowadays, but then it was a practical problem. So I did that. Was I went around. There were still people alive who'd known him and so on. So I did that, not even thinking I would be writing a biography later on. But luckily, it kind of sowed the seeds, I suppose, for that. There had been one biography written in 1966 by Ian S. Munro, which gave the basic facts of his life. Not a huge, I suppose our expectations of biographies nowadays are much, much higher.
Okay.
But he did give the main facts of the life, but there were various things that I think Mitchell's widow was looking over his shoulder, and she didn't want certain things put in, whereas I had a completely clear run in. There was one critical book had been written about him, which was Douglas F. Young's Beyond the Sunset. And that was a very good study, but it's kind of limited. It was about Mitchell's interest in diffusionism, the diffusionist approach to history. So I had quite a clear field really to explore there. And the big thing was I corresponded with Ray Mitchell, Mitchell's widow. And I went down to stay with her for a week shortly before she died, actually, and she had all the literary papers.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that was a year into my PhD,
Oh,
and I could
wow.
read these papers and chat with her at night, and it was
Fabulous.
fantastic. Oh, it was. And again, a lot of personal stuff that I didn't use for my PhD, but it was stored up, and that was kind of the start of looking at the man.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the criticism was fairly basic at that time. A lot of it was wrong because a lot of it was nationalist,
Oh, wow.
because that was there was a groundswell for devolution in Scotland at that time, and people were trying to basically reorientate Scottish literature in a fairly basic nationalistic way. And Mitchell's better than that. I mean, he's a great Scottish writer, but he deals with much more universal
Yeah.
terms. So obviously, the other thing was that he was still being regarded as a great left-wing writer, which he always has been. He's a strong anarchist, communist, and obviously he was writing between the war and dealing with very, very important social, political themes. So that was how my kind of academic studies started.
Okay. Okay. But you had all this material stored away for future books then when you finished your PhD.
Yeah, most people, or a lot of people, when they finish their PhD, that's it, and they kind of think, "Thank goodness I've done that. I'll move
Yeah.
on." And I just didn't. After that, I was kind of the daughter, Ria Martin. She supported me to do a miscellany of his correspondence and
Right.
essays and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. And then after that, the Grassic Gibbon Centre opened up in Arbuthnot, and I was invited to help them. So I was doing all that. And then things like the Open University, they were wanting to do a module with him, and I was involved in that. And
Yeah.
then the commission to edit the Sunset Song for Penguin,
Wow.
that came out of that.
Wow.
So it just kind of, I tumbled onto new things, and it was always him. And I keep rereading him and finding new things, and I just my wife actually says that there's a third person in our marriage, and she's not wrong. She's not wrong. So it's just carried on and on and on. It's been great,
Yeah, I'm sure. Can I ask you about your role as member of all those things that you've done? Could you sort of explain that to us? Your role as member of the Live Literature Scheme. What does that consist in? What do you do for that? And as well, you're an administrator of the Mitchell Literary Estate, as I said. Well, in practice, what sort of work or what do you do for those?
The Life Literature Scheme is a very good scheme. It's a funded scheme by Book Trust Scotland, and basically it pays me to go out and speak to. It could be school groups, it could be
Right?
adult groups, or whatever. The
Okay.
kind of problem with that now is that these groups don't have money anymore.
Ah, right.
So what I tend to do is I do them for free just because I love doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so basically, I mean, I've done the workshops for teachers, secondary
Okay.
school teachers, about how
Right.
to approach Sunset Song. I've done workshops with school pupils who are doing Sunset Song at higher.
Okay.
I go around libraries because libraries are struggling to justify their existence these days
Oh,
because
wow.
local councils are wanting to make cuts all the time. So I go around all these, go around local history groups. I'm doing one in Aberdeen next year, actually.
Okay.
So basically, I just go anywhere that will listen to me.
Good plan.
Um, so yeah,
So,
it's really I really love promoting him, and he is actually a popular figure. There was a BBC dramatisation of the Scott Square trilogy in the 1970s, and a
yeah,
lot of people were hooked by that. So
right.
he's not just a kind of rarefied academic figure. He is actually a popular character in Scotland,
Yes,
so there
yeah.
is an audience for
And
him,
would
which is great.
and would you say just obviously you might not know the answer to that, but would you say that lots of schools te still teach Lewis Grassic Gibbon and some maybe not the three, the whole Scots
Yeah,
Square, but one of the
yeah.
books
And it's,
from your role as a in the scheme, would you say that there's lots of schools still putting this book on the syllabus? One of
That,
the
well, that, I think there's a problem nowadays with the Sunset Song was a staple of secondary school education, and it
yeah,
was one of the specified texts.
right.
But it was taken off as a specified text actually this year,
Oh
and I
wow.
think I think the main problem is actually literacy. It's a high tariff text, and I think teachers are finding it more difficult to deal with big texts like that and in the
Yeah,
time
yeah,
that they're given. And it's actually the ideal, it's the perfect text for people at, as I said, 16, 17-year-olds.
yeah,
It's dealing with all the important issues that they're encountering. Um,
yeah. And
so
it's incredibly
unfortunately,
modern.
sorry?
It's incredibly modern as well.
It is, and it keeps changing and it keeps
Yeah,
adapting to the times. I mean, the whole, as I said, the whole thing about nature and
yeah,
mindfulness and all that is absolutely current. And all the political stuff. You look at the world we live in now, and he was desperately looking for solutions in the 1930s.
yeah,
And we're looking exactly for the same thing. We're looking for, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer,
yeah,
the
yeah.
mainstream parties aren't doing their job. The right, the hard right is on the march, and
Mm,
he was dealing with exactly the same things.
yeah, yeah, true.
Um, so he's still a man for our times.
Right. So let's come now to the history of a revoluter.
Right.
Can you maybe first of all explain the title and tell us why you wrote this book after Lewis Grassic Gibbon, a revolutionary writer? What made you write this other book?
Right. The biography was the culmination, I would say, of all my studies.
Okay.
And I came upon it. As I say, I'd been working on this miscellany uh, after my PhD, and it became obvious that the man himself was a very interesting person too. And it was 2002, Ria Martin, the daughter, she said, right, we'll support you in every way we can to get a proper critical biography of our
Mm.
father done. She and her brother Darrell had actually been very young when their father died. Um, and when he died, they didn't only lose him, they lost their mother, because their mother's way of coping with the grief, which is a very Northeast way,
Wow.
was to shut down all the emotion. She would never talk about him as a person with them. So they had no idea what he was like as a man.
Wow.
And there's a lot of stuff that you can still find, online or whatever.
Mm.
People I'd been talking to, acquaintances, and so on. So that was one of the kind of motivations for me. But also, you understand his books, you understand his motivation behind his writing when you learn about his life, what he was doing.
Mm.
And there's a
Mm.
huge amount of stuff still to be added in every chapter of his life, from his background, and a lot of that can be done online, finding out about his ancestry and so on. His schooling,
Yeah.
a lot to be added about that. Through to, his kind of politicization in Aberdeen and in Glasgow. Glasgow was a Red Clydeside at the time he was down
Mm.
there.
Mm.
And then he went down, well, he had the experience in the forces. He joined the army in the Middle East. I did a lot of research on that. And again, the Middle East now, a lot of the problems started 100 years ago when he was out there.
Mm.
And I could get, I got his army records and everything. So if you work as long as I have on him, you will find stuff,
Yeah. Yes.
and I did get a lot, and there's a lot of great secondary research as well. The Middle East, there are books in the last 5 years that have been written on that are absolutely superb. And I benefited from that too. Um, so yeah, so that's where that came from. The other books kind of allowed me to get my ideas sorted out. I haven't really changed my basic approach to Leslie Mitchell. I think he's a great humanitarian writer, and I think that's the most important thing about him, and that comes across. And that's what all my books basically are saying. This one is exactly the same thing, but it's looking at really the reasons why he became a great humanitarian writer. And the title
Yeah.
um, is actually a quote from a letter that he wrote to Naomi Mitchison in the
All right.
1930s. And he was talking, she'd obviously asked him about, what are your politics? And he wrote to her and he said, I suppose I'm still some kind of communist. No, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm still some kind of revolutionary, he
Okay.
said. And then he talked about how I've kind of, been sort of there about the Communist Party, been an anarchist, been a Trotskyist, and but he could never quite fit in with official organized groups. He always felt that he had a right to speak out against them, which is why he could never really be a communist.
Yeah.
So he said at the end, he couldn't say, I'm there for a revolutionary. So as he always did, he's always making up words. So he made up this term revoluter, and he said, history of a revoluter.
Ah,
So it's this kind of humanitarian, radical, sort of revolutionary, but not official revolutionary. So that's where anyway,
where it came from.
that's where the title came from. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Bill, every time I make one of those 10 minutes interview, I wish I could make them longer. And this really is the case today. I would
Yeah.
really love to hear more about, about what you have to say about Louis Grassic Gibbon. So, but our time is up. So I will
Thank
have
you.
to thank you very much for agreeing to answer my questions today. And I'm sure that our viewers will be really as fascinated as I am to listen to you. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thanks a lot, Mary. It's been great.
Thank you.
I got